Let's talk to our defence correspondent Jonathan Beale, who's here in the studio with me, and let's rewind slightly to that announcement overnight of freezing US military aid to Ukraine. In terms of hardware, first of all, the significance, the impact of a move like that.
So I think it's fair to say that Europe has stepped up its own military support in terms of military equipment and ammunition since the start of the war. So at the beginning of the war, Ukraine was very heavily reliant on the US. It's less reliant, but still reliant on the US. And if you look at the kind of equipment and ammunition that Ukraine needs from the US, it is what one Western official called the cream. It is the sophisticated air defence systems, Patriot air batteries. It's the long-range missiles, the HIMARS systems and the ATACMS missiles. And those are the things that the US has been able to provide. And on top of that, of course, more sophisticated equipment like fighter jets. I mean, European countries have given Ukraine fighter jets, but they are US designed and made and intellectual property fighter jets. They're F-16s. So America has been key, and Europe, even though it has stepped up its productions, and it is now sort of not far off the US in terms of, for example, producing 155 artillery shells, of which the Ukrainians are using thousands all the time, they still can't fill that void that the US would leave. And the other thing I'd say is that, how long will they last, the Ukrainians, without American military support? I think they're saying they've got stocks for 6 months, some people saying 3 months. We know that...
And various Ukrainians on the programme already this afternoon saying, actually, this will be felt on the front lines, the battlefields, very, very quickly. So that is the fear from the Ukrainians. We talked hardware, but what about intelligence? Because that is so critical in a war like this.
Yeah, and if you go to any Ukrainian frontline trench, you will see a Starlink satellite dish, which they have been using not just to communicate with each other, their family back home, but to use for targeting for their drones and their artillery systems. Now, Elon Musk obviously provided initially Starlink systems. Then, people have been supplying them, volunteers, raising money. There was a stage when the Pentagon was covering the cost of that when Elon Musk complained. Elon Musk himself, of course, has gone from a position of giving them to Ukraine to now being very critical of Ukraine and President Zelensky. He is part of that Trump administration that has made this decision. Space-based intelligence and surveillance. We know that Ukraine has been using commercial satellite imagery, but we believe they've been having American intelligence too, not least to target warships in the Black Sea, for example. Now, we do not know whether that relationship has been cut. And I think you can talk about the political messaging, but there's also a military-to-military relationship. The military-to-military relationship is often stronger. And I talked to somebody at the Ministry of Defence here in the UK today, and they said they were deliberately not asking the Americans what they were doing because they didn't want to highlight to the Trump administration things that might raise alarm bells and then reconsider.
Just brief, quick final thought, because we don't know how long this pause is going to last. Can the Europeans fill any sort of gap, do you think?
Well, they have filled a gap in the sense of artillery shells. So they are now producing, about more than 1 million artillery shells between them. So they have done something, but, they are nowhere near filling that void left by the US. And I think that, what we will see is similar to, remember, under the Biden administration when Congress did not approve US military aid. I was in Kharkiv when the Russians renewed their offensive and they were rationing ammunition. That is what you might see happen if this goes, and it'll be worse the longer it goes on.
Jonathan, thanks very much for that assessment. Jonathan Beale, our defence correspondent.